Hello comic book fans, here's Earl Grey, today with another episode about the Mignola-verse, these two books here, and two other horror-related comics. More about these two later. First about the Mignola books proper. This is only written by Mignola, but this is also drawn by him, so let's start with this one. Both are vampire-related. This is actually about the Count Dracula. And it's not my most favorite horror scenario, I have to say. Vampires and vampire stories are well-trodden paths, almost too familiar. We always have this love couple confronted with this ancient evil in some dark part of East Europe, but this is fantastic, and this package here is fantastic because it's Mike Mignola, even though this drawing here looks a bit more like Daniel Klaus. But that's not no mistake in my opinion. This is Bram Stoker's Dracula, or even more Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, because it's an adaptation from the movie of the same title, done by Roy Thomas, and he did a fantastic job in plotting the story here. Even though we have some pages with a lot of text, for the most part he really believes in the abilities of Mike Mignola to convey the atmosphere and a story in his panels. And sometimes when you have a movie adaptation, it reads a bit clunky, not fluid. You really can tell that this is a movie adaptation. In this case, it's not so. This comic can really stand on its own, in my opinion. Even though if it would have been a comic from the beginning, maybe they would have left out some of the characters. There are really a lot of characters involved. There's not this one love couple that is confronted with the evil, but two. And yeah, start my problems with these tropes here. There's a girlfriend, or the main girl in this story here, or the main lady, and she is a bit flirty with a man. She has 3 love interests and is punished for her untrue behavior. She's the first who got bitten, and these uptight moralistic beliefs of the 19th century that you find in these stories make them usually hard to digest for me, I think. This sticky atmosphere where actually sex is the theme but isn't addressed as sexuality, just kind of weird metaphor that even kids can read it and aren't offended. I don't know. Vampire stories, as I said it, they are usually a bit difficult for me. But this story here, and boy, Mignola did a hell of a job here, as you can see. And it's inked by some guy, not by Mignola himself, but by John Nyberg. But he didn't make any mistake, but I think this could have been inked by myself, and because Mignola's art is so precise, and when you compare it with the finished panels, you see that Nyberg really haven't much more to do than just trace the lines and fill out the black parts. Even though some of Mignola's pencils really look more beautiful, more precise. it's hard to pinpoint why this is the case in this bonus material back part with his pencils. Fantastic stuff. Maybe this shiny paper isn't the best paper possible for this kind of story. But anyhow, other than that, a beautiful book. Some people complained that the colors are missing in this. And it's obviously here just black and white, and they missed the colors. Yeah, can't say anything about that. I really enjoyed the black and white version, but I can imagine that the colors could add something to the story. So, me being not the biggest fan of vampire stories, I really appreciate it when author and artists make a bit fun of the old tropes when they don't take the stuff too seriously, as it is the case with this small book here, Mr. Higgins Comes Home, written by Mike Mignola and drawn by one, is this his first name? Yeah, it seems so, Warwick Johnson Cadwell. And as you can see, with this penciled drawing here in the frontispiece, this is more a cartoony, child-friendly, funny way of depicting a vampire story. One of my favorite illustrators came to my mind, Ronald Searle. And it has a bit of child book illustrations and East European book illustrations in general. An abstract feel for the absurd, the grotesque, and it's a really fun, fast read, and I enjoyed it a lot. And sometimes it really makes obviously fun of the whole plot and narrative. For an example, there's here all the undead celebrating Walpurgis night, I believe. Hail Satan! But it is as colorful as it can be. And at some place, here's the devil as a goat. Mr. Higgins has a personal problem which comes to fruition here. He breaks through the wall, and amongst all these familiar tropes, he just says, well, this is unexpected. And I had a good laugh, because in the run of the story, it's really, yeah, the familiar tropes versus his colored cartooning. And I think the cartooning wins big time, and the comic in general wins big time. Yeah, funny book. We're going through the emotions here, because this book here is, yeah, not so funny. It's really touching, because it's the last work of Bernie Wrightson. Frankenstein, Alive. And all in all, it's a very emotional trip, I have to say, because it's a pondering about being on the edge between life and death. This monster of Victor Frankenstein obviously is now part of a sideshow where people pay to get a glance on that monster. He is a very calm and friendly being, actually, but he found some kind of outcome, and this is sort of a frame narration, and we get very quickly a flashback to the time in his life when he escaped the castle of Frankenstein. He killed, obviously, the family of Frankenstein, and is haunted by imagining Frankenstein and so on. And he wants to commit suicide, which is hard when you're this almost immortal monster or a being. And I don't want to say anything more about the story, which is good and well, when you have in the back of your mind, this is drawn by one artist who was aware that he has not to live a longer time. It's really a touching, and he did this knowing that his life will end, and with so much love and care for every detail here. I think that tells you a lot about the man and the comic artist and how devoted he was to making his comics. Look how he drew, for instance, the face of the monster, in quotes, monster, because he's a calm human being, actually. But this face here beneath the surface of the eyes, that's fantastic art. And it even gets better in the second part. He comes to this professor, this scientist, and look at this laboratory. Some of us, when we will know that we won't have so long to live anymore, maybe we will go to Hawaii, maybe we will drink too much, maybe we will do crazy things. Wrightson did just what he always could best, and draw the heck out of this panel here, or these pages. That's just crazy. The amount of detail. And I love this kind of presentation of scientific research material, this 19th century style. We were in London, in the Museum of Natural History, I believe it was, and it was the same kind of presentation with goofy sideshow, almost artifacts, embryos, weird skeletons and stuff like that. And my family and me, we are all into this kind of stuff here, and into books, obviously. Before Bernie Wrightson died, he selected the artist that should finish the story here, and this was no one else than Kelly Jones. And you can tell it when Kelly Jones kicks in here. This is not the swamp monster like Frankenstein's monster anymore, but a more Kelly Jones approach. He did a good job, I think, even though his art hasn't the soul of Bernie Wrightson, I have to say it, even though I'm a big Kelly Jones fan. But yeah, maybe it is so because Kelly Jones didn't do really his own thing. He obviously had the biggest respect for Bernie Wrightson, and everybody would have, and he stuck very closely to drawings and thumbnails from Wrightson. And if you compare them, the thumbnails, I mean, to, and here this drawing for an example. This is Bernie Wrightson's pencil that he had done shortly before his death. And this is, quite frankly, so much better. What a long arm that is. So much better than Kelly Jones' version of it. Maybe I can find this here. Here. The same stuff depicted. Okay, the lady had changed a bit, but look at the monster, and this is Kelly Jones' version, even though he almost had only traced what Wrightson had done before, but he left out some kind of details, and yeah, it's not, as I said, it lacks a bit the soul of Bernie Wrightson. A totally different kind of horror comic is Beautiful Darkness, written by Fabian Fehlmann and drawn by Carrasqueux, which is a pseudonym for a couple, a man and a woman, who had done this very disturbing comic. Maybe you would not guess by the first glance, and the nice lettering and the beautiful leaves and this little girl here with the big eyes. But what's this hand here? I'll tell you, this is the hand of a dead girl in which all these fairies and around which all these fairies live. And I can't show you these panels because it's really depicted in all detail, you know, how this girl decomposes. Maybe you can guess the setting by this panel here. In almost the best children book setting, we have these little fairies live under the leaves and yeah, on the meadow inside, and they build a cute little shop out of this bag here. If there wouldn't be this food and of this girl here. And in further panels we really come to see how the body of that girl is decomposed and the worms are crawling everywhere, and the fairies even partwise feed on them. It's really disgusting and disturbing, and there is some other YouTuber who couldn't help himself but to destroy this book here, which made me really angry. But he couldn't just handle the confrontational provocation of this book here. And it is somehow a provocation, but such a well done comic here, and it really makes you think, and that's the saving grace of this stuff here, about the human nature actually, and all this cuteness thing. How often in life it is that the most cute, the cutest people are the most evil ones. They just take advantage of their looks, and how often it is that you're just sugar-coated with meaningless politeness and being ripped off at the same time. More luck to you if this hadn't happened to you, but I think this is very common, that the people who can talk the sweetest, cutest, most meaningless stuff get the furthest in life sometimes. And this is really the true meaning behind this comic here. All these little fairies here exchange little courtesies and polite, meaningless sentences, formulas, and in the end, with the result that in the end, the ones with the lowest moral agenda win, and almost, let's see, and sometimes very violent stuff like that happens. Yeah, this is definitely not for your kids, and really, this is the stuff of nightmares, and it gets your fingernails. My fingernails were rolled up at some places, and this will tell you something, because I'm really, I'm a bit. It's hard to impress me in that way, and this book here really impressed me. But most of all, and because of how well it is done, and really how interesting the whole concept is done. It's really interesting how this comic deconstructs the concept of cuteness, of being cute and nice and smooth, and all this sugarcoat stuff is just thrown in the face of the reader. And very interesting, very good comic, and I will definitely follow the stuff that this pair, Carrasco, however you pronounce their name, or artist name, what this couple has done before or after. So, this was quite a mixed bag of comics, I think. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.